Welcome to Mental Health Monday. My name is Mick Coyle. Coming up on the programme this week,
I put unedited journals into a book. Do you know what I mean? So I've become known as this person that speaks out openly.
To frame something around an artistic performance, to put something on in, at the Edinburgh Festival, I think that's testament to sort of where we've come, but also the bravery of people to say, you know what, I will put this story out.
He goes, I keep telling her this, Edinburgh, here she comes. And I got off the Zoom and I thought I was meant to be the mental one. Like, are they mad?
And I'll be reminding you how you can make connections with mental health organisations within your community. It's Mental Health Monday. The home of the UK's conversation about mental health. Welcome to another edition of the podcast. Thank you for your streams and your downloads. Thank you for your shares and for everyone who's getting involved in the programme. It's always an absolute pleasure to have you on board. Cracking conversation today. Once again, we're going to be talking about bipolar, as well as a host of other things, because there's lots going on in this conversation with the actor Natasha Rea. Now, Natasha is speaking to us ahead of a trip up to Edinburgh, where her new performance is going to be on stage as part of the Edinburgh Fringe. But she's also got a preview event, which is coming to a theatre in Liverpool. So I'm hoping that you might listen to the conversation and then actually think, you know what, I'll check that out if I'm in Edinburgh, or particularly if you're going to be in and around Liverpool and in and around the Hope Street Theatre in the middle of July. So the new performance by Natasha is called A Night with Me, Myself and Bipolar Brenda. And it's based on, well, we'll hear where the story comes from, and you'll hear about how Natasha's journey so far has got her to this point. And Natasha is so open about her experiences, the good and the bad, the difficulties that she still has, but also the benefits that can come from putting on an event like this and the feedback she gets from putting on an event like this. She's a really inspirational character, and it was great to spend some time with her. Now, she's an ambassador for Bipolar UK, and there's plenty of information on their website where you can find out more about living with bipolar, and I'll put a link on our podcast notes so you can find out some more information for it as well. You can also catch her at the Hope Street Theatre in Liverpool on the 12th and the 15th of July. That's the 12th and the 15th of July at the Hope Street Theatre in Liverpool. It's a night with me, myself, and Bipolar Brenda, and then it's heading over to Edinburgh. It's going to be at the Symposium Hall between the 21st and the 26th of August. That's the end of August at the Edinburgh Fringe as well. There's so much in this conversation, and she's such a great character to talk to, and how she just talks about her own experiences, I think so many people who've had similar experiences will relate to. So it's time to have the conversation. And I started off by talking about the fact that for a long time, Natasha was living her life without diagnosis. And for a long time, I had lots of questions about why her life was maybe going the way that it felt that it was.
Yeah, it was really tricky because, more so back then, because, gosh, we're going back like, I'm 34 now. And I started struggling, I was 14, 15 when I started struggling, but it was after I had my son. So you're probably talking probably 10 years now. And I'm sure you know yourself, 10 years ago, there wasn't podcasts about mental health. There wasn't people posting about, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. There was nothing out there for me to even suggest that I had bipolar disorder. I'd heard of manic depressive because my grandma was a manic depressive, but I didn't link, I just didn't, it wasn't something that I thought. And it was really tough. And it takes on average 9.5 years to get a correct diagnosis of bipolar disorder. We're still at that. Sometimes it helps people getting a diagnosis because they're going, oh, okay, that's it. I know. And it did at first. It really did, because it was like, oh my God, right, okay, that's what's wrong with me. But then it was just this awful doubt came of, oh my, well, who am I? If this condition makes you feel things more and makes you sad and makes you, so, well, what about how I feel? Because then I don't, and it was just a massive, confusion, and of having to kind of get to at that age as well. I think having a child at 21, having to get to know yourself, and also then getting to know this other side of you that, as people I've become aware is classed as my alter ego, Brenda. You're getting to know two different kind of versions of yourself in a way, which it isn't, because she's part of you. She, I keep referring to self. I keep calling myself she recently. Yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky because it's not a one size fits all illness, bipolar. It's not, and it's one of the most misunderstood.
Can I ask you, when you get that diagnosis, were you able then to think back to things that had happened earlier in life that made you think, oh, actually, yeah, that makes a little bit more sense now, or maybe that was what was going on in that particular moment?
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. There's a piece in my show. It's called Bipolar Equals Shame. And we've had to cut a lot down, obviously, for Edinburgh, because you get 50 minutes, you're in and out. But this particular piece is where it dawns on her. She looks back and she goes, it was that moment. And it was actually a particular moment of anger and irritation and feeling everything too much and feeling very tired, very angry and very agitated. And that was a moment, and I lashed out. It was with my partner at the time when I was younger. And that then sat with me as I got older, because it was okay, is that who I am, or is that the bipolar? So that was a moment where I look back, and if I was to put a pin in, I'd go, okay, that it was that moment there. And then obviously when I took the overdose at 15, you kind of go, oh, okay, so this is what was happening.
You mentioned there sort of that young age. Is there anything that, like, earlier than that you can think, like school? Obviously high school is a difficult time for everybody, but obviously if you were going through that at the same time, were there ripples from that you can almost trace back even earlier?
Yeah, I left school at 15. I was not good in high school. I was very disruptive. Yeah, I didn't go in much. I had terrible attendance. So I remember that I was doing a TV show called Burn It, and they weren't going to let me have the time off to do it, even with my license, because of my attendance. I got barred from the dinner hall. I remember that, actually. So I used to sit with the attendance officer to eat my lunch. So yeah, looking back, I had a very short fuse. I had a very, very short fuse, but also my mum's Italian as well. So, I have probably got a fiery side. That's the thing you see when you look at the diagnosed bipolar in you. Sometimes you have to go, no, actually that's me. I'm a bit like, that's mine. But one thing that was really funny, well, it's not funny, obviously. My friend, I've just been listening to Lewis Capaldi, because Lewis Capaldi, what happened to him at Glastonbury's knocked me for 2 days. I've not been very well for 2 days because of what happened to Lewis Capaldi. But I was a hypochondriac, and my friend said you were always constantly at A&E because you always thought something was wrong with you. And she said only when she came to the book launch, and I'd not seen her for years, bless her, and she came and she sat next to my friend who's a producer, and I could see them both sat there, and she kept going. And she turned around to me, she said, there was so many things now that make sense to me after you wrote that book. She said, I'd remember you'd come out and you'd want to be out 24/7. She said, and then nobody'd see you for 3 weeks. And she said, you used to get obsessed with things. She said, and one thing that sticks in my mind, she said, you got obsessed with Ribena ice lollies. Yeah. Yeah, loads of Ribena ice lollies. But I do that now. It'll be like a particular thing, and that'll be it. I'll just it's tomatoes at the moment.
Right.
Yeah, cherry tomatoes.
It's interesting that, isn't it? Because you then get those reflections, don't you, of people who knew you before, then obviously see you in this new space, if you like, and then kind of they join up the dots for themselves. But it's interesting there, the idea of you sitting in the hall with the truancy officer, because we talk about labels. You're the disruptive kid, bad behaved kid, won't show up for school.
Do you know in high school where they have like a classroom there and a classroom there, and then the corridor? I'd sit on the corridor and I'd still be disruptive because there was a glass window. So there was an English class going on there and there was a maths class. And some of my friends were in that set and some of them were in that set. And I'm still being disruptive. So I think they kind of just thought, where do we put her?
At that time, during that time, were you ever thinking, oh, what's going on here? Or how am I finding myself in this situation again? Or was it just like an in the moment type thing?
It's such a difficult looking back, because when I was 14, it was when I did Burn It. And I was with somebody who was an actor, and he went into a really high profile show that kind of blew up overnight, and he'd never done anything before, and all of a sudden there was all these billboards everywhere, and he had a lot of pressure on him. So I don't think that kind of helps. So it's really, I always find it difficult to look back at that time, because it was, okay, I just got an acting job and I was filming and I was doing it with one of my best friends as well. But then my boyfriend was in this massive show that then everybody knew who he was. And the pressure for him as a young lad was a lot. But then I think I carried some of that pressure as well. Yeah, which could all have, I probably now when I look back, I don't deal with stress very well. And people are probably, who know me, are listening to this and going, you've just produced and put a one-woman show together. And I get that, but I don't deal very well with everyday stuff. I find it really, really difficult. Really, still,
That suicide attempt at that point, then, do you think that was a result of the build-up of all of those things? Because actually there is that element of, the TV work's going on, but at the same time you can't even get into your own school, or if you do, you've got to sit in the corridor outside. So you've got this sort of like, some people go, oh, Natasha's doing this TV stuff, that's great, but then equally you might be thinking, yeah, but all this other stuff's going on at the same time, plus these outside pressures are kicking. Is that where the build-up sort of kicked in?
I mean, I suppose when you look at it, yeah. And I think obviously I've lived with it now for so long that I know when I'm getting ill. And I've had this conversation so many times recently that feel like I have this sort of pressure on me now, because I've become known as this person that has basically, like, she again, listen to me, I put unedited journals into a book. Do you know what I mean? So I've become known as this person that speaks out openly. But what I think people, I feel I have this pressure on me now, that people look at me and go, and I think it's called, I don't know if it's like imposter syndrome or whatever it's called, when I get messages off people and they go, you're such an inspiration, and it's like, and in my head I'm going, no, you don't understand. Like, I went into rehearsals the other day and I couldn't breathe. I'm like, literally, I have a disabled badge now that I've had to fight for, so because I can't not be near a place that I need to get in. And I got into rehearsals and I'm like, and Jackie, who directs me, she was like, are you okay? And I was just like, can't do this, can't do that. And so yeah, I'm still living with it. I always think people think when you come out and you write these stories of mental health and suicide, and it's always, how you overcome it. And I'm constantly relapsing back into it and picking myself back. It's constant for me,
The show, A Night with Me, Myself and Bipolar Brenda, we'll talk about where people can see it. But you mentioned that 10 years ago, there are no podcasts and no world in which that you can live. At what point did you think this story can live on a stage? At what point did you think?
I didn't. I didn't. It was a producer and an agent that had an option on the book, and I lost it, and I was devastated. And it turned out to be one of the best things that ever happened to me. It's mad, that, isn't it? Like, a massive loss like that became one of the best things I would never have wrote. But she turned round, and I've not slept, and they're both, high up in their game. And she said, I don't know if you thought about it, but I think you should think about writing a one-woman show. And this was October 2020. Yeah. Okay. And she was like, I think with all the characters in your book, and I went, me write it? Yeah. And then the agent, he goes, I keep telling her this. Edinburgh, here she comes. And I got off the Zoom and I thought I was meant to be the mental one. Like, are they mad? This is what I'm thinking. I'm like, wow, they're not, I'm dyslexic. I can't write. I'm not a writer. And then I started writing scripts and I fell in love with it. And I lost my drama teacher and I went to Ibiza. I was in a really bad place. And I just decided there, I was like, I'm going to put this on as a one-woman show. And that was in the September 2000 last year. And then contacted Jackie. I said, would you be up for letting me use the studio and direct me? I had no idea what I was doing. I still don't. I've never worked in theatre before. And then it just got a massive response. But then again, that's the pressure because it's done well. It done so well, then, my mind's constantly like, oh God, so what it's just, my mind, honestly, it doesn't stop. I'm walking around in circles for 2 hours and I'm like, what was I looking for?
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Oh, colour. And I'm terrible for colour coordinating things and stuff. So I never intended to write a book. I never intended to put a stage show on. But here we are.
I think as I'm getting older, I've got 2 young kids myself now. Like I'm kind of getting to the sense about where, and I've now noticed that stuff that's like dreams or aspirations or things that happen, I've realized now they only ever happen when you do them. You know what I mean? So like, if someone mentions a one-woman show, it doesn't happen until you write the one-woman show. Like if you've got like a bit of work in your garden needs doing, no one's going to do it for you. It only happens when you go out on a Saturday morning, and get it done. It's interesting actually that you've taken those steps and actually you've reaped the rewards of getting those steps. But it sounds to me in your mind like there's part of your brain still playing almost like catch up with, oh God, how do we get to this point? Whereas actually you've been on that journey right from the start, haven't you?
Yeah, I think, I have this conversation all the time. I don't know how to do that. And my friend is a producer, and he's like one of it's just amazing. I love him. And he's supported me to tell the story from day one when I sent him bits of journal bits. And it's that thing in life, and I do believe in it. If you take the first step and then you that's all you need to do, is you just need to put your foot out there, and then the right people and the right opportunities then start to present themselves to you. The right people and the right opportunities. And if something, I love the speech with Chadwick Boseman, I can never say his name properly, who sadly passed away, who played Black Panther. If anybody listens, to go on YouTube and listen to his speech, because it's so powerful. And he says, God will move away somebody that's blocking a door for you to go through it. And I think what is for you won't go past you. And also I think when you've been through something like what I have and what I'm still going through, I am not suffering like I am. And, I'm speaking to you now, and I've brushed my hair and whatever. But yesterday I was in absolute despair. I'm not going through that and not finding some light from it, because there's somebody else that's feeling the same way as I am. And I remember feeling like that 10 years ago, sitting in a wardrobe on my own with nobody and nothing to be able to find help. So I think you have to find a reason for what you're going through, because if you don't, it'll be so much more worse.
I think so. That's when we bring in like the idea of an audience coming to, and there'll be someone who might just catch this show and don't really know what it's about or sit there. But then I'm sure there will be people who've interacted with your work already, and then we'll see this show as well. And they'll go, wow, how did you do that? Like I could never, or even like, how have you even found the words to put that up on a stage? You're going to create with this show, I imagine, those moments that people would go, oh, right, I maybe now understand something of myself, or that's me, or I thought I was the only one. All of that sort of relatability. But that comes from you putting yourself out there and finding, an opportunity to to put on a show like this, I guess.
The people that came, you know, there was a voice message that got sent to my friend. I don't know who the girl was. And she said, and she went, I've just got home. She went, oh my God. She went, I've never seen anything like it. She was like, it's the most real thing I've seen in such a long time. She was like, we were crying our eyes out. And then when she was talking about her son and her anxiety, you know, I get really bad anxiety and I feel like I'm dying. And this is what she's saying. And you had people coming out going, I'm not just going to start tweeting, be kind. I'm going to try and start to do better. I came out feeling inspired. I wanted to do more. I wanted to do better, not quite sure what but I wanted to do something better, you know? And I've always said, for me, with creativity, I've always said this, if you can I want to make entertaining stuff, obviously, but if you can make something creatively that can change opinions and also maybe make somebody feel better, then I think you're winning, aren't you? Do you know what I mean? Regardless of what applause or what credit you get, you know.
But this is the thing with like putting, you know, a story of somebody with bipolar or putting bipolar on stage. Like the fact that it's going on stage as a thing shows how people are trying to find ways to express it or talk about it. And some people might find that the best thing for them is to, you know, go and see a TED talk on it, or like a, you know, a scientific explanation of it from, you know, people in suits and stuff like that. But it's so interesting. I always think within the mental health world that actually what we can also do is we can provide these platforms where you can talk about it in like a theatre environment with someone who's doing a performance on stage. So for someone, it might be the most educationally important thing they see. For other people, it might just be that thing they saw at the theatre. Yeah. I think that's one of those things which I think is one of the real benefits in this mental health world, that actually our pathways into it can actually be really quite diverse. And actually to frame something around an artistic performance, to put something on in, you know, at the Edinburgh Festival, but to have such an important issue at the heart of it, I think that's testament to sort of where we've come, but also to I'll use the word bravery. You don't have to, but the bravery of people to say, you know what, I will put this story out and I will put with tickets that people will have to buy to come and see, because actually there's value in that. And the treatment that I'm going to give it through performance will be worthy of standing on a stage and people hopefully standing up and applauding at the end.
Well, they stood up at Oak Mill, and on the first night I backdoored it. I didn't know what to do. I got off. I thought, what they do, what's going on? And I just ran off. I ran off. Yeah, and like I say, there you go, there's the pressure, you know, and I've already been told, you know, they don't stand up in Edinburgh. But I'm not bothered, like, you know, audiences are unreliable, but you don't be, you know, you whether you stood on a stage telling it to 100 people or you're telling it to 3 people, sorry, that's my pug snoring. You give it the same, you know.
Because I was going to ask you about that, because obviously you're doing a theatre show, you've done TV work as well. Corey, Emmerdale, people will know you from that. And is there something about that sort of live space? Because obviously it's very personal what you're putting out there as well, or your experience is very personal as well. Is there part of your brain which is kind of judging that immediate reaction? It must do, because that's how theatres work. But are you judging immediate reactions, or are you just thinking, I'm telling my story no matter who's there, if you like?
Initially with Hope Mill, obviously I didn't know what I was doing, you know. I just wanted to just tell the story, and I worked really hard, and I became weirdly very calm as soon as I walked into the theatre. And I became very calm on stage. Like I say, I struggle with normal things. I struggle with everyday life, but being on a TV set and being on a stage is like having a comfort blanket for me. That's where I feel safe. That's where I feel calm. And people would probably go, you've got social anxiety and you can't go in Tesco on your own, but you can stand on a stage on your own. Yeah, I can't give you an answer to why, but that's what it is. And yeah, there is pressure for me now. There is 100% the little voice in the background, but I have to keep reminding myself, I'm just telling a story that I feel needs to be told. a story that I know that's had an impact on people over the last 3 years. And also as well, it's really funny. Do you know what I mean? Like, people, I won't swear, but people was like full on howling, laughing. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm talking about serious mental health problems, but you know, that's how I deal with it. You know, I have to make, you know, thinking in Tesco, you know, what are you going to do? Live your life for the next 15 years, not making a bit of lightheartedness about it, because if I didn't, I'd probably be even worse. So yeah, it's really funny, and I think people wouldn't expect to see a show about, you know, she again, have you heard me? She's talking about suicide and addictions and losing complete control of reality, thinking, you know, she's Tinkerbell. And people was finding parts of it hilarious, because I've gone on so many self-exploring things to do to help me with this condition, you know, and some of the things, like, you think, oh my God, what's she doing?
You know, I wonder, part of that, the humor, I think, is humor's a good gateway, isn't it? Because if someone's telling you something about themselves and you're thinking, God, this is all new to me, or this is like how do I react to this? If you then see that person can tell a joke, or gives that person permission to accept the information, I think, and then almost think, oh, and I can respond with a laugh, and everyone knows how to laugh. But I think sometimes, like, artists like yourself create those moments which just then allow people to sort of go, oh yeah, no, I did, because they would never go and see a lecture about bipolar and the diagnosis and the signs and symptoms. They wouldn't go and do that, but actually they would go and listen to someone talking about their experience of it, having a bit of a joke and a laugh about it. That would sink in much more than any sort of cold, like, it sounds like I'm slagging off lecturers here, but like something like that would go down and sink in and resonate with so many more people, because then it is real. It's worth me asking about, at this point, who is Brenda?
So we gave Brenda, Bipolar Brenda, the name for my son, I think, mainly. So there's Bipolar Brenda, Depressed Debbie, Anxiety Annie, and OCD Doris. And I suppose they are, people go, they're alter egos, but it made my son understand where I was and where I am at. And he knows now, you know, he'll say things like, oh, my mum's a bit Annie today. If I have to go into a supermarket, he has to come with me, and I have to have the when you put the stuff on, the whatever you call it, I have to have the meat in that bit, the veg there, this, that. It's just what happens to me. And if somebody tries to rush me, you know what it's like if you go to Aldi, you know, the like, I can get quite highly strung, and there's been times where I turn around to somebody and he's gone, my mum has OCD, like, my mum's got, you know, so it just, I mean, he's amazing. And there's a big, I would say that it's not just my story that I'm sharing, it's also his, and there's a massive piece in there about him, and people just sob, like, you could hear full on sobs, because, you know, it's relatability, you know, and these names just helped him, because how do you tell a 4-year-old why your moods go up and down, and why you can't go outside, and why you can't drop him at school? How do you explain that to a 4-year-old, you know? So it was, let's go with the names.
Yeah. But you do that, don't you, when you're talking about other things? You create characters, don't you? And that's how we tell children's stories. We create characters, and they represent, you know, the goodies and the baddies, and the person who does this and the person does that. So actually, it's about it's about creating content for people to be able to understand it. How old is he now, you said?
He's 11.
So he's probably got a better understanding as an 11-year-old with experience that he has than the average Joe or Joanne in the street. Like, he would know more about bipolar, what life is like than 98% of people you'd see in the street.
It's a blessing and a curse, because you feel awful, and I hate, I'll always have this guilt over me because of the stuff that he's had to see, and because of the failing of the system as well, which is very much a part of the show. I go into that about my experience with the mental health system and how we can do better, with each other, treating each other better. But he is, he's just incredible. He's incredible, and the compassion and care he has for other human beings. And it's a line in my show that most adults have never been able to have their entire lives. And he's the backbone behind it all. I'm sat here now. I always get upset when I say this. Sorry.
All right.
I'm sat here now because of that little boy.
I think he's obviously an absolute champ. And I think that thing around compassion and empathy, we all need to, because, and this is, my guess would be that, if he is experiencing something or he's seen something, you've equipped him with the skills to kind of go, okay, who's this today? So he then second guesses the situation. Think, all right, okay, we're in an Anxiety Annie moment, or this is a Doris moment. Whereas I think, can you imagine if you taught everyone in society, when they see someone, flipping out on the bus, or when they see someone kicking off somewhere, or they see someone not returning their calls or not showing up on nights out, if everyone had the power to think, right, rather than just responding to them and going, oh, what are you doing that for? To then think, right, what's going on in that person's mind today? Or what's the best way that I can approach this conversation? Or what does this person need at this? What does this person need me to be at this particular moment? The whole of society would change overnight, wouldn't it? Because suddenly people would think about other people, their experience, how people can help and show compassion in a moment where someone's obviously struggling. Whereas instead, we just try and protect. Most of society just tries to close in and protect itself, doesn't it? Whereas your son's learning some incredibly important skills.
Yeah, there's a little boy who lives near us, and he was getting bullied at a different school, and he'd come home from school and he would go and walk the little boy home. And I kept saying to my mum, what's he doing? What's he, And he was like, because he's being bullied and he's scared to walk home on his own. And it's just these things, that when I sit back and I always think, oh, I'm such a bad mum and stuff. But then I look at how he carries himself and how he conducts himself. And it does make me feel proud, because I feel, from an awful situation, what I've lived with this illness, and that I'm still living with, I'm still living with, battling daily. Something positive has come out of it, because I think he'll go very far in his life. And I think they always, it's a cliche quote, but they say your life becomes better by making other people's lives better. And for me, I think Luciano is the definition of that. And I don't think you can say that about many, even when he was 5, 6, Luciano made you want to be a better person, and he wanted to be better. My mum's diabetic, and you should see what he's like with my mum. Like, he knows more about diabetes than I do, because he's educated himself. He's got one of those things now. It's just, he's seen a lot, but he's doing good for people. And I think that's all you can ask, I think.
Absolutely. And I'm sure he'd be well impressed if he's old enough to understand what the Edinburgh Fringe Festival is.
He's coming with me. See, I wouldn't be able to do it on my own. I literally wouldn't, it's a risk me doing the Fringe because of my depression and because of my hypomania. But, we've made that decision to take it to the Fringe, but he's coming with me. I wouldn't be able to won't be able to do it on my own.
And the good
By
news
my
is
side,
it's during the summer holidays as well, so there's no risk that attendance officer comes knocking at the door. Not a problem at all.
I'll have my dinner with him.
So we'll put a link in the podcast notes to where people can see it at Edinburgh as well. We've got a couple of warm-up shows at the Hope Street Theatre in Liverpool on the 12th. That's a Wednesday, and the 15th of July. That's a Saturday as well. A night with me, myself, and Bipolar Brenda. Natasha, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you on the podcast today.
So much for having
really
me.
Appreciate it, and all the best with the show.
Thank you.
And I look forward to hearing what you get up to next.
Yeah, sure there'll be a story.
I hope you've enjoyed this week's podcast. Thanks for checking out Mental Health Monday. My name is Mick Coyle. You can find me on Twitter at Mr. Mick Coyle. You can also find me, Mick Coyle, on Facebook as well. Don't forget, if you want to speak to somebody about your mental health, you can do so. The Samaritans, free to call on 116 123. You can find mental health services where you are. Just look for the Hub of Hope. Type in your postcode. It'll find those mental health services close to you. And for support in a crisis, you can text SHOUT to 85258. That's if you're experiencing a personal crisis, you're unable to cope and need support. Shout to 85258. That's a text line. Do get involved in those services. In an absolute emergency, always remember the number to call is 999. Thanks for downloading the podcast this week. We'll be back next week with more Mental Health Monday.